Oi, what's the best game where you get to eat pie? What's the best game where you play a dead guy? You'll find out in VG247's podcast. Here, what's the best game where you swing from a rope? And what's the best game where you batter the Pope? Assassin's Creed 2. Like I said, you will find out in this here podcast. Hello and welcome to VG247's Best Games Ever podcast, where we attempt to find the best game within a category that we've made up for panel show purposes. For example, this week we're asking, what is the best game that takes more than 10 hours to get good? This is not a rare phenomenon. There's lots of games out there that are absolutely dog shit until you get to 30 hours in and it clicks. And it's always up for debate whether or not the game actually does get good after such a vast amount of time, or whether the people who have stuck at it for that long are just suffering from a form of Stockholm syndrome. But the real victims of games that take forever to get going are those of us who are time poor and jaded. Spare a thought for those of us who never have enough hours in the day, but also, let's face it, just don't have that long left on the planet.
Oh, God.
Speaking of which, joining me today is Tom Murray.
That is one of the best segues yet.
Hello.
Alex Thompson.
I enjoyed the really angry head shake halfway through that. Yeah.
And Sharif Saeed, how you doing?
Hey, hello, hi.
Okay, so it's the best game that takes more than 10 hours to get good. Now, there's a lot of them. Fucking most of them, actually. But I want to hear first, let's just get cracking right into it. I want to hear first from Alex, because I bet you everyone's like, I know what Alex is going to pick. I know exactly what Alex is going to pick. And I guarantee you,
I have a guess.
I guarantee you nobody has guessed what Alex is going to pick.
Yeah, there was an option that I thought was too obvious, right? Where I thought about there's the Final Fantasy game, right, which is a sewage pipe that leads to the ocean, and when you get to the ocean, it's beautiful. But the sewage pipe is not. Well, actually, the sewage pipe is very visually beautiful, but in every other sense, it's not. But no, I picked a very big budget game, a huge bet for one of the most famous game designers and game development studios in history. Yeah. Huge bet for a big publisher. Wasn't tremendously successful, but nevertheless was a really good game. But God, it took a long time to get really good.
Had a huge marketing push, this game as well, I remember.
Yeah, like it was marketed as, you know, the culmination of a whole genre, basically. Mm-hmm. So that game is Spore.
The second appearance of Spore on this podcast.
yeah, and creator of The Sims and SimCity and so many great simulation games. This is Maxis, who at that time I think I would say were still a powerhouse. At that time, 2008, The Sims was still massive, and this was before the humiliation of that 2013 SimCity game. And the idea was he was basically going to make a game that was all those things in one, right? And many other things besides. So it's a life sim game. It's a god game. It's a real-time strategy game. And the concept of it was that you would begin as a creature, and as those creatures evolved and changed, and through the process of evolution, the style of the game would play. So initially you'd just be playing as a single organism. And then you'd be playing as a tribe, and that's when it might be a god game, and and so on and so forth. And then at the end, it culminates in this RTS when you're literally conquering the planet, and not just the planet, the universe, and the big element of it that really sort of that everything hinged on, that I think wasn't as good, and it was almost, this was the thing that hurt the game the most, was this idea of you would create your own creature with evolution being a part of it. So if you did a lot of things in a certain stage where you were on all fours, then you might be a race that remained down there. Whereas if you did a lot of stuff standing up, you would be bipedal, and so on and so forth. If you only ate vegetables, you wouldn't have the big teeth and all that sort of stuff of the carnivores and all that sort of stuff. And that element of the game, I think, is probably the weaker side. But each individual stage of Spore, I would say, is actually a really good game within that genre. Or a decent game within that genre, at least when you get to the mid-late game. But the early stuff, man, it's a real, those early stages are a real slog. Obviously you have the cell stage, that's the playing as an organism, and it's like just this boring, shitty version like Snake, or it's actually a bit like Flow, if anyone remembers that game.
Yeah, I remember Flow.
But it's like a crappy version of Flow, and then
yeah,
which is saying a lot because Flow is very, very simple.
Yeah, and then you've got the creature stage, and the creature stage obviously where you play as an individual creature, and you've got a nest, and you're going back and forth, and you have tasks to do. But it's just extremely tedious because at these stages, you're sort of all you're doing is gathering resources in order to go through the next stage of evolution and get to the good bits of the game. Then the tribal stage is sort of a slightly mid RTS. But then the latter stages, the space stage and the civilization stage, which sort of resemble stuff like, well, Civilization, and then, I don't know, stuff like Endless Space and things like that, are really, really good. And it's like, I could have played those two stages for 40, 50 hours on their own. But the early stages start out really bad and get gradually better in a way that's a real bummer. And I think the reason this game didn't do as well as it could have done, despite the absolutely huge marketing blitz, I think a lot of the people that did buy it bounced off it before they got to the really good stuff.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think a lot of people were very disappointed with Spore when it came out, and a lot of people didn't actually get to the good bit. Can I also say as well, I really liked your description of Final Fantasy XIII as being a sewage pipe that leads to an ocean.
Well, it basically is, because that game is literally tubes that funnel you down. Funnel you down, and then eventually it literally dumps you out into this big open world, and that is the point. I think so. I don't remember exactly, but I want to say that game is 13 chapters. They quite like doing that in Final Fantasy. In fact, when Final Fantasy 15 was like 16, 17 chapters, I was like, what are they doing? I was like, just put the fucking chapter stops in such a place where you have that many chapters. But
yeah.
But I think there's 13 chapters in that game, and legitimately, the open world bit is like chapter 11 or 12. So once you leave that, you're on the roller coaster to the end. But that means 2/3 of the game you don't get a single side quest, and then it dumps you into this huge place where there's hunts you can do and all this sort of stuff, and then you go back on the roller coaster to the end. It's a really weirdly structured game. And I did think about it, but also I don't think it qualifies for the best game part of this, where I like 13 plenty. I think I like 13 plenty, and I think it's a lot better than people give it credit for. And certainly Final Fantasy VII Remake would not exist without 13, because there's totally like a DNA between those games.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that game's amazing. But yeah, I just didn't think it was good enough, whereas I do think Spore is genuinely good enough. And also I think it's a bit of a bummer because I don't think there's very many reliable ways to play Spore now.
No, it's become a bit of an abandonware thing, hasn't it?
It is on Steam, but it's like I think it barely works basically.
Yeah, is it on GOG? Because that'll
probably. I mean, it's on Steam, but it's just I think it just barely works.
I don't think so because it's an EA game, and I don't think they've done that sort of deal with GOG.
Rubbish. I just wanted to point out to everyone that yes, we had to have a little segment on Final Fantasy XIII there for the purposes of the topic. It was not planned, but Alex delivered. So because he's a professional. Right. Okay. Next, because I made Tom go last week, and I want to do it again. So I want to hear from Sharif.
Oh my God, a curveball. So I think RTS games, God games, and like 4X games in general are sort of the bread and butter of the game that takes 10 or 20 hours to get good. By definition, you start off very small, and then you're building towards something that you will not be able to see for dozens of hours, right?
Yeah.
But I am not a nerd, so I'm not going to pick one of those. No. My pick is instead something that I came to a little later than I should have. Yeah. That I think is, once you stick with it and not shrug it off like I did initially, it is one of the best, most interesting games in the genre.
Is this Dark Souls 2 again, Sharif?
It's not Dark Souls 2, although it is a game that would have worked for the best game with an acronym that is in FIFA. So I am talking about Soccer Shadow of Chernobyl.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The 2007 first-person shooter RPG systems-driven immersion gameplay in creator thing from GSC Game World. in Ukraine. That game has been delayed for years and years and years. And it was sort of almost a joke that they keep announcing release dates and never releasing it. It came out in 2007, which, if you're not aware, this is one of the all-time great years for shooters and just games in general. It's the year of Halo 3, BioShock, but more relevant, I guess, to that is Crysis, the first Crysis. And so you look at the technical wizardry that they were doing over there, and you look at Stalker, and you're like, this game is 10 years old. What's happening here? Why is this coming out now? And so that's exactly what I did in 2007. I was a dumb little kid who wanted to upgrade his graphics card to play Crysis at an acceptable frame rate. And I overlooked the gym that is Stalker. So Stalker is basically, as with many games made in Eastern Europe, it bites off more than it can chew. So it's on the surface, it's an open world first-person shooter with RPG elements set in the exclusion zone, based on the book, of course, and the movie. You start off with a pistol. There are anomalies that make you hallucinate. There are factions that are fighting each other. There's an inventory Tetris game thing that you have to play to get your rations good and to put your rifles and your ammo. There are traders. There are quests. But the best thing about it is that it leaves you to explore all these different systems and never tells you how to do it. It's sort of the thing that we are coming to now as games have become way more structured and people are a little sick of it. In a sort of a similar way how Elden Ring was like, just get out there and do what you want to do. You'll figure it out. Soccer was one of the first games that, to me, basically told me what the meaning of an immersion gameplay moment is. It's the game that it's one of the first games that I remember telling someone a story about, that they were about something that they have not seen and didn't think was even possible. It's a game where you, again, the tools and systems in it are the factions. You meet someone from a faction, maybe you betray them mid-mission, maybe you go on a raid and get something that the other faction wants, so you kind of play them off against each other. It's that sort of like, I'm doing a trade, a quest with a trader, but that quest takes me to a weird part of the island where the anomaly thing is stronger, but I'm not taking as much damage. What's going on here? It's a mechanically janky game. Like, the shooting is not great, and if you want to play it today, you'll be playing it with a ton of mods on PC to get it to, I guess, what you would consider a modern standard in terms of gameplay and accessibility. But it is one of those games that if you look at it like I did, you'd be like, what the hell is this? And if you play for a couple of hours, you're like, this is janky, the shooting is bad, this is what do you want me to do? What is the quest log? Well, but what's this BDA thing going?
That's how far I got with it.
Exactly. And that was my thinking at the time. But then you come back to it and you like, just give it a chance. And about the 10-hour mark is when you're like, oh no, this is like someone dumped a whole bag of Lego onto the floor, and I need to fucking figure out what to do with them. I love Stalker. They have sort of refined and also gone back on a lot of what made it great in subsequent sequels. Super excited to see what we end up getting with Stalker 2, of course. God bless him, trying to make that game with the war.
Oh, God,
but yeah, Stalker 1, absolute gem.
I feel like Stalker was very ahead of its time in a lot of ways, and a lot of what it was trying to do would eventually become, in a much more dumbed down version, what it was trying to do would eventually become stuff like, Far Cry 3 onwards and stuff like that. I feel like
Far Cry 2 mostly.
I feel like it was trying to do a lot of stuff that hadn't quite been codified yet. It's a very early example of a type of game that would go on to become very mainstream and very successful. I'm looking forward to seeing how the sequel works out. But my memories of Stalker are very much getting to that place you were talking about when you're like, what the fuck is this? I think I gave up on it at a point where I just kept getting killed by a pig somewhere, and I was like, I can't fuck with this.
It's quite a scary game. I found it. I think I stopped playing it because I couldn't handle the atmosphere. It was just too much.
It was very
really oppressive.
It's thick.
Yes.
Yeah, you know when Sharif, when you were saying when you said the words like most games out of Eastern Europe, I thought you were going to say it's bleak.
It is pretty bleak because if you if you like under the surface, again, this is one of those things that the game doesn't do a good job of representing, or maybe that's intentional. There is a very grim story about like survival in an exclusion zone and dog eat dog mentality, and I think the stakes that come with that is like I personally believe that games like Escape from Tarkov and the extraction shooter stuff owe a lot to Stalker. For one, a lot of these devs went on to make these games, but also because of like it illustrated that you can do these systems with stakes in a first-person shooter. Yes, it was single player, but someone like expanded on that and took it to multiplayer.
But also, like quite directly, like stuff like the Metro series, right? A lot of the same devs went on to make that, and I think Metro Exodus is a fantastic game, and it's like very much a direct evolution from Stalker. Like you can chart that like as a straight line almost.
Yeah. The Metro games for sure. If you actually look at the tech demo for the first Metro, it looks extremely similar to Stalker to the point that they had to change the whole thing. So a little bit of a nerdy history bit for you. I don't think like even Metro Exodus, which is their best game, I feel like it has like maybe 20% of the systems and the interactivity of Stalker.
It's very, very dumbed down, but I feel like it's it's a very good sort of overall package. I think
for sure
it works as a whole. All right, okay. God, Stalker's a blast from the past, quite literally. So, right, we've got to hear from Tom now. We've got to. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Oh my god!
I've got the dread here.
That's a bit harsh.
He's going to be Football Manager again.
I didn't
oh god! No. Football Manager doesn't qualify
Tom,
because you can never get into it.
I didn't mean to suggest that having to listen to your pitch was...
I might just not bother.
Tom, can we please hear what your pick is for the best game that takes 10 plus hours to get going?
So this is a game that I think you two picked, particularly Alex, picked very geeky games, right? They're a bit like super geeky. Stalker was like, you had to be a certain type of PC gamer to be into that when it released. Probably someone that was like up for like, I don't care about these massive bugs and glitches because it's brilliant, you got to play it anyway. Apologist for the game, but it ended up being good, but whatever. So my game is much more like, you don't have to be a proper geek to enjoy it. And the reason I picked it is that to begin with, there's a lot of, what I'm going to say, like admin almost, like you've got to just get things ready to go, and it takes a long time to get the game set up in terms of even the options through to then the actual like systems and like the people in it ready to go. It takes a long time, and then once you've done that, and it can take a long time, particularly if you're playing this on its hardest setting, you're fine. You're in the groove then. You've done all the kind of slightly tedious stuff and you're into it. And my game is Football Manager.
Oh my god. Alex is about to leave his chair.
I see now why we might be doing video soon, because I couldn't even speak then. I was just I just turned away in disgust.
I was like that close to leaving.
I mean, I think if you've played Football Manager before, you'll know this, but if you start on like what is classic Football Manager, not one of the newer like Touch or whatever they call it, where it's more streamlined. The full version of Football Manager, there's a lot to get through before you even play a game of football. And that is not my favorite part of Football Manager. Like you get, it's like building up your like pre-season stuff, going on friendlies, getting the squad sorted, sending out a load of scouts, getting loads of stuff going essentially before it all ticks over. I don't enjoy that.
The pre-season as someone who, because I'm a funny one, because I'm not that into football, but I tend to, maybe every other year, I'll have a Football Manager save, and I sort of play it like a tactical RPG. I play it like it's fucking Final Fantasy Tactics.
I was going to say it's a fucking RPG, so you're
it basically is. I have written an article either for VG247 or RPG site that is about the joy of playing a sports management game. like an RPG.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think this wins even remotely, but I will concede to Tom at the very least that the preseason does sort of suck.
It's a bit of a slog. You have to get through it all because you've got particularly if you've got a new team, maybe you've decided to be a bit silly and gone with a team you don't know. You've got to learn all the players, like who what they're like, what they're good at, etc. If you just opt for I'm going to go in as Spurs because I like Spurs, it's fine. You know the squad, you know what to do. But if you're going, I want a bit of a challenge, I'm going to go and manage Rotherham, for example. That is a real place if you're not in the UK. It does exist. And then you've got to learn
qualifier to prove
you don't know who these people are. You've got to learn their strengths, weaknesses, etc. Where's their best position? Are they good with their left and right foot, etc. You've got to hire probably a load of new backroom staff because most of them are probably rubbish, and you've probably got to put out a load of bids of players you're never going to get because you want to get a better squad. And then you've got to trawl through the transfer list for players you could afford who you don't know because they play in a league you have no familiarity with. So a lot of it is that stuff. It's like you get through it and it can take a long time. Like if you're playing it I used to play at lunchtimes quite a lot, it takes a long time to get to the point where you're actually in the start of the season. Once you're there, it's fine. It goes a lot smoother at that point. And it's the same. That's one of the reasons why I'm never that keen to switch to a new version, because I'm embedded in the flow is going right, and then you get a new version, you've got to start again, you've got to do the whole pre-season stuff again, you've got to pick a team, etc. And also why just changing jobs in Football Manager is slightly annoying, because you've got to do that whole thing again. You often get offered jobs when you're doing quite well. It's such and such wants you to become their manager. I'm well, I don't actually know if let's pick a team that I'm sort of aware of but not up to speed on, Roma, for example. They're a perfectly good team, but I don't know the squad in and out I would the Premier League teams.
But what you're describing also is it isn't just the start of the game. This is because Football Manager runs in cycles. It's constant. Every X number of hours, you have to go through a terrible preseason again. There's much like real life. There's a constant slaughter of miserable emails that want to make you die. I
think the first season is the worst because you've got all the stuff that comes with even setting up the game. How many leagues do you want to start with? How deep do you want the database to go so it doesn't make your computer crawl? All this stuff is quite tedious, and that doesn't happen in future seasons. It does happen every time you buy a new Football Manager, which does, I think, make this a very good choice, because it's just every year you get the same issues, and it's just, I don't think they can fix it as such. That's just part of what Football Manager is. There is the more streamlined mode that gets you into it a lot quicker, and I would always choose the more in-depth version, even with the slow start. But yeah, Football Manager has a very tedious opening, and it's also clearly a better game than Spore and Stalker.
How much of Football Manager's appeal and quote-unquote gameplay can be recreated by looking at a spreadsheet and trying to do Excel stuff?
Pretty much all of it.
You don't get the visuals.
I'm one of these people who, when I do play Football Manager, I still play on the 2D view, Tom.
I do. I can't do 3D view. It's wrong. 2D view with the little blobby men running around.
It's wrong.
You have to play like that. You can't play it with the fully 3D graphics because that's not proper,
I'm sure you tried to get Football Manager past me on one of these things. I mean, before last week, in the past, and I said something along the lines of it not even having a graphics engine, and you were like, it's got 3D matches now, Jim, as if that was a point in its favor, and now you're saying it's not a point in its favor.
I'm saying that if you're coming to it now, you probably prefer the 3D match engine, which looks fine. But as someone that has played this since it was Championship Manager years and years and years ago, it's the overhead, full pitch view, the little dots running around. That is how you have to play it. And you can project your own imagery onto it. Whereas the 3D view is when it glitches a bit and looks a bit weird, you're like, oh, that's a bit weird. But when it's a dot, you just don't see that, and you just imagine it being beautiful football.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the difference between watching a book or the film of the book, isn't it? You sort of, your imagination is much more vivid than anything Peter Jackson can point his camera at.
Except it's not exciting as either the book or the film.
Well,
I've got a lot of memories of watching my mates when I was in high school who were like way more into. I mean, I'm not into football at all. I mean, I'll watch it when the World Cup's on, but apart from that, like but like I just remember my friends just staring at. This is back when it was Champman, staring at this screen with like red and blue boxes coming up with like, that's a penalty.
Yeah.
So and so's over here now. Blah 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 blah. Red card, yellow card, but it was just going because they were just clicking through it because like you get like all the events of a football match in very quick succession. It's like, blah, blah, blah. And then they were doing like quick calculations as a football manager. Okay, well I need to take that into account for this, and it was like watching a sleeper agent getting activated by a fucked up bit of video on like X-Files or something. It was mad. But okay, all right, well we need to cut to an ad break now, or possibly just the jingle, depends where you're watching it really, and then I've got to pick something.
I think on the ad-free version, we should replace the actual advert for real products with like instructions to follow us on Twitter, or maybe just follow Tom.
Yeah, you should follow Tom. To be fair, but we had a little campaign to get people to follow you on Twitter a while back, didn't we, Tom?
Yeah, it didn't really work.
All right, okay, so let's go through it. Oh, bloody hell. Right, okay. So, I'm going to go through it. Alex is going to be really annoyed with me.
There are two good choices. I know it's hard.
There are two good choices. Right, first of all, okay, so, Football Manager is...
No, Jim. No, think about this.
I'm not entertaining Football Manager as being better than either Stalker or Spore.
What? I think you'll find Football Manager has far more players than either of those games would dream of getting.
That is definitely true. That is almost definitely true.
It's also a game that actual football coaches play as a sort of to be better at their jobs. If that's not an indictment of it as a game, I don't know what is.
Yeah, exactly. It's not. It's like it is to sports games as fucking America's Army is to shooter games. It's just fucking. It's a training tool, isn't it?
I love it. I just don't think it's picked for this category. If they made an American football version of this, you would probably never see me again. Like so I fully accept that it's decent, but in fairness, American football is a better sport for that sort of game, in my opinion. But that's enough.
In fairness to Tom, I have played the F1 version of one of those, and it is fun. But like for the same thing that a phone game is fun for like an hour, and you're like, okay, but do I just get to make decisions? And it's like, yes. It's like I'm not interested.
Yeah. But see, none of them are the beautiful game, though, isn't it?
Yes,
none of them are the beautiful game. Right. Okay. So.
You're mocking this. You're mocking it, but
something about that just flagged me. That
I guarantee people will be messaging, going you were wrong.
I'm not taking. Tom Ori got robbed once again.
They will be saying it. Someone will say it.
Someone always says it. At this point, people say it just to upset me. Right? Okay. So Tom Ori's not winning this week. Yeah, most of you will be pleased to find out. Alex, Spore is
He's the winner.
He's not the winner. It's a bad game.
I only played that demo. That demo where you create the creature. That was enough.
It's just overly ambitious for what it ended up being.
It's a very I was going to say very ambitious, very on a technical level, like an incredible proposition. I mean, the idea that you take an entire species through its entire development up until it's like an aggressive intergalactic empire, and it's a very grand vision, but almost no component of that grand vision is particularly well executed. Until you get to like, as you say, vastly the later stages. And I realize we've got to be careful here because the very nature of the topic is like, well, the game's crap for hours. but look, I do think that Stalker, right, as as a template for something that actually like set a lot of the groundwork for things that came along much later and did the same things much more successfully. I think, as we've said, it's very ahead of its time. And as an experience, I don't think Stalker, unlike Spore specifically, Stalker doesn't really change dramatically halfway through. You kind of just get used to it, I guess.
Your understanding of what it is changes, and I think that changes but the fundamentals of the gameplay don't change.
Like it doesn't have any kind of like 11th hour pivot into something else.
No. I mean, the story. That's not really mad.
Yeah.
To be fair, Jim, just so we know for future, are we allowed to now pick games that are bad if they spawn other things that are good?
I don't know.
Stalker is not a bad game.
Right.
Does that count as them being good?
Hang on a minute. I'm not saying Stalker's a bad game at all. What I'm saying is that it was
broken,
clearly a lot
glitchy mess.
Barely
ran on PCs.
But
it did not barely run on PC. Crisis barely ran on PCs in 2007.
Yeah, I think it was a good game overall, and it's a lot of its ambition sort of outstripped it on a technical level.
Sure.
All right, it's fine. So I get it. In the future, I'll only pick games that retroactively are good.
It's not retroactively good.
It's not. So look, I think it was a real like neck and neck toss up between Spore and Stalker, and I think just the aspect of the fact that Spore has like some very hard dividing lines between the bits where it's good and the bits where it's bad, whereas Stalker is like, you know what, like for some of us it's either dog shit all the way through or it clicks, and then it becomes brilliant.
If you give it 10 hours and you are a little bit patient, I think you're in for something that no other game does.
We should do the reverse of this topic next week, like games that are great for 10 hours and then turn to dog shit.
Assassin's Creed, full stop.
I was going to say Assassin's Creed 3.
Just say Assassin's Creed, end of sentence.
No, actually, no, right? I'm not having that. But Assassin's Creed 3, because you play Haytham Kenway and you basically play fucking George and James Bond cutting about the colonies, stabbing people, and it's fucking brilliant. And then you have to play his fucking dickhead son for like 50 hours after that, and it's terrible.
I thought it was cool. The twist was cool. As someone who does not enjoy Assassin's Creed, I enjoyed 3 among the highest, like the most of the series.
Yeah.
So.
It's 3's got a lot going for it because you are killing Brits like a lot, and it's it's up there for that reason. But it's that switcheroo where you play this suave, sophisticated sort of gentleman, sort of knobhead character, and then he goes away for almost the entire game, apart from when you end up killing him. Spoiler. All right. Anyway, enough about Assassin's Creed.
I turned off then. Anything about Assassin's Creed, and I'm just like,
that's why it's 10 hours.
I'm asleep.
It's basically an RPG now, Alex. You love
Except
that.
it's terrible.
Fucking, I can't get into this conversation. I swear to God. Like,
hey, remember Dark Souls? What if we had a lock on? Hey, remember this? What if we had a skill tree all padded with bullshit? But that's not an RPG though. Like that's not.
Their Breath of the Wild clone was better. Whatever that was called,
Immortals Phoenix Rising.
That was legitimately like built on the same engine as Odyssey and Origins or whatever, and just a better game in every way.
Yeah, same pillars. Lots of buildings with pillars in it. Same ones.
It probably is.
I mean, I bet so many assets were reused from Odyssey for that game. All right, okay. So the best game that takes more than 10 hours to get good is Stalker. Slightly controversially, I have to say. Thank you very much for listening. Please give us a 5-star review, because as we said last week, if you do that, then our friends at Eurogamer get really mad. But you can't also give them a 5-star review. You have to just give us one.
Also support our crusade against Football Manager and games that are barely games. Thank you very much.
Tom looks disgusting.
Tom absolutely looks.
I'm just watching the clock. I've got to go to a meeting, but you lot have been waffling on about for about 10 minutes.
All right. Thank you very much. Bye.
Like I said, you will find out.
starting this here podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps us get the word out. We're not just a podcast, of course. If you'd like to hear more from the team, then check out VG247.com for our fantastic news coverage, features, reviews, and game guides. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Transport links are pretty great here in Scotland. Your cars and aeroplanes, therefore, knobs man. You want to cross the Firth of Tay, there's only one way, ScotRail. Every minute someone's taking ScotRail. Not curtain rails or humpback wheels, no ScotRail. Up, Glasgow Central, and Bekeithing, Bathgate,